My mother didn't just pass the gravy that Thanksgiving, she passed a death sentence on my identity. 25 people sat in a circle, their faces flickering in the candlelight, waiting for the signal to erase me. All in favor of Diana being officially removed from this family, my mother whispered, her voice like silk stretched over a razor blade. Raise your hand. One by one, the people who shared my DNA reached for the ceiling. I watched my own father's palm rise, a slow, heavy betrayal that felt like a physical blow to my chest. We've been carrying your dead weight for 27 years, Diana, she said, looking at me with a terrifyingly calm smile. Now, it's over. I thought that was the end of my life. I was wrong. Because 30 seconds later, the front door creaked open and a man we hadn't seen in 14 years stepped into the light, clutching a battered leather briefcase. And what was hidden inside those rusted latches was about to make every person in that room wish they had never looked me in the eye. My name is Diana Hensley. I'm 27 years old, and until that night, I was the family ghost. Let's go back to the Wednesday before. I was sitting in my car in my mother's driveway, the engine idling, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The house was glowing, every window a stage for a play I didn't want to act in. I could see the silhouettes moving behind the curtains. My mother, Patricia, was the director naturally. My sister Megan was the stagehand, setting the table with that frantic, pleasing energy she always has. Why was I even there? Have you ever felt a loyalty to people who wouldn't even step over a puddle for you? That was me. Last year, during the pumpkin pie, my mother told the whole table that my school counselor's salary probably couldn't cover my own groceries, let alone the debts I owed the family. Nobody defended me. They just kept chewing their turkey, the sound of silverware on china filling the silence where their support should have been. The truth, I've been on my own since 18. I paid for my own car, my own rent, every single cent of my student loans. I never asked for a dime, but in Patricia's world, the truth is, whatever she says loudest. I stepped out into the biting November air. My gut was screaming at me to turn the key and drive until I hit a different time zone. Tonight is different. The wind seemed to whisper. I didn't realize how right it was. As I walked up the porch, I heard her voice through the kitchen window. Oh, she actually showed up. Gerald, set one more plate, use the cheap ones, the ones with the chips. The dining room was a claustrophobic nightmare. 25 relatives were squeezed into a space meant for half that many. I was banished to the kids' end, sitting on a folding chair that wobbled every time I breathed, right next to my younger cousins who were fighting over a broken crayon. Mom stood for the blessing. She folded her hands, her expression one of practiced saintly patience. Lord, she began, we thank you for this family, for the ones who carry the burden, and for the ones, she paused, her eyes locking onto mine, who we are forced to carry. Amen. A cold shiver raced down my spine. The air in the room felt thick, like it was made of wool. Aunt Martha wouldn't look at me. Cousin Kyle looked at his lap the moment our eyes met. There was a secret in this room, and I was the only one who didn't have the password. I leaned over to my cousin Jenna, Uncle Robert's daughter. She looked like she wanted to vomit. Jenna, what's going on? I whispered. I almost didn't come, Diana, she breathed, her eyes darting toward the head of the table. My dad, he said something might happen tonight. Before I could ask what that meant, my mother's voice cut through the room like a whistle. So, Diana, how's the apartment? Still surviving on those little paychecks, or do we need to start another collection for you? A ripple of polite, nervous laughter traveled down the table. It wasn't mean-spirited from everyone. Some of them were just following the leader because they were afraid of being the next target. I'm doing fine, Mom, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You know, she said, turning to Aunt Ruth, I've been keeping a running tab of every dollar we've spent on her over the years. It's a staggering number, really. A running tab? My heart started thudding against my ribs. There was no tab. I hadn't taken $1 from her since I was a teenager. I looked at my father, Gerald. He was focused on his turkey, sawing at it like he was trying to cut through a piece of wood. My sister Megan was staring at her plate like it was a black hole. They knew. This wasn't a dinner. It was a curated execution. Mom reached into her cardigan and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She didn't open it. She just tapped it against the tablecloth. Tap, tap, tap. We'll get to the numbers after dessert, she said. I felt like I was sitting in a courtroom without a lawyer. Have you ever been the victim of a lie so calculated that you actually started to doubt your own reality? Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to fight a narrative you didn't even write. I need to know I'm not the only one who has felt that gaslighting burn. The room was rearranged after dinner. The coffee table was pushed aside, chairs formed into a wide, jagged circle. It was too organized to be spontaneous. I thought about grabbing my coat and running, but I knew the script. If I left, she'd spend the next 3 hours telling them I ran because I was guilty. My version of the truth would be buried under the weight of 25 people who only heard her side. "Everyone, please," my mother said, standing in the center. She put on her reading glasses, her official glasses. "I've been carrying this burden alone for too long. Tonight, I need the family to help me make a decision." She unfolded the paper. Her voice was calm, the voice of a woman who just wants what's fair. Item 1, she read. The cost of raising Diana from birth to 18. Housing, food, medical, adjusted for inflation, $112,000. A gasp went around the room. Item 2, she continued. College financial support that was never repaid. Tuition supplements, emergency funds. Total, $23,000. The air left my lungs. "Mom, that's a lie," I whispered. "I took out loans. I worked 2 jobs. Please, let me finish," she said, raising a hand. Item 3. Diana's share of expenses drawn from your grandparents' estate. Miscellaneous support. Total, $18,000. That's over $50,000 in extras this family has invested in someone who has never once said thank you. I looked at Aunt Ruth. She was nodding. Uncle Ted had his arms crossed, his face set in stone. They believed her. Why wouldn't they? She had the paperwork. "Do you remember when I had to sell Mom's silver tea set, Ruth?" my mother asked, her voice cracking perfectly. "That was to cover Diana's dental bills." I never had dental bills. I had been on my own insurance for 5 years, but the silver tea set was a legend in our family, and now I was the villain who had melted it down. Then came the blow I didn't see coming. "I think it's only fair," she said, looking around the circle, "that we vote on whether Diana should continue to be a part of this family, our gatherings, our traditions, our future." The word vote echoed in the silent room. I looked at Megan, my sister, who I had shared a bedroom with for 16 years, wouldn't look up from her lap. I looked at my father. He was staring at a Coors Light can like it was the most interesting thing in the universe. "All in favor," she said. "Raise your hand." Aunt Ruth's hand went up first, then Martha, then Kyle. I watched the hands rise like a slow-motion wave of daggers. 10, 15, 20. I watched my sister. Her jaw was tight. Her hand started to lift, hesitated, and then she pushed it into the air. 25. Only my father was left. "Gerald?" my mother prompted, her voice soft but commanding. My dad, the man who taught me how to ride a bike slowly, so slowly, lifted his hand. 26. I was standing in a room full of my own blood, and I had never been more alone in the universe. "We've been carrying your dead weight for 27 years, Diana," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You are no longer welcome." I turned toward the door, my vision blurring. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I took one step, and that's when the house shook. The front door swung open. A gust of freezing November wind blew out the candles on the table. A man stood there, framed by the darkness. He had white hair and a worn jacket, and in his hand, he held a battered leather briefcase. Uncle Robert. He hadn't been to this house in 14 years. My mother's face went completely blank. Not angry, not shocked, just empty, like a machine that had been unplugged. "I wasn't invited," Robert said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "I know." "Robert, this is a family matter," my mother snapped, recovering her mask. "You gave up your right to be here years ago." Robert didn't look at her. He looked at me. "I should have done this a long time ago, Diana. I'm sorry it took this long." He walked to the center of the circle, pulled a chair from the wall and sat down. He placed the briefcase on his knees. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. 14 years ago, Robert began. Our parents died. Patricia was the executive of the estate. She told us there was nothing left, that the funeral and the taxes ate everything. He looked at the room. We all believed her. Because she's our sister. Because she's Patricia. My mother's knuckles were yellow from how hard she was gripping her chair. "Robert, don't you dare." I kept quiet for 14 years, Patty. Now it's my turn. He popped the latches on the briefcase. Snap, snap. It sounded like 2 gunshots. Mom and Dad left an estate worth $360,000, he said. A collective gasp hit the room, and they left a specific fund, $40,000, earmarked for their granddaughter's education, Diana and Megan. I felt the room tilt. The education fund, the one Mom said didn't exist. I found a bank statement a few months ago. Robert continued, pulling out a stack of papers. An account that was supposed to be closed. It showed dozens of withdrawals, all going to a personal checking account. He didn't have to say whose. Every eye in the room slid toward my mother. "He's lying," she screamed. "He's always been jealous. He's fabricating this." Robert didn't raise his voice. He just held up a document. I hired a forensic handwriting examiner. "This is the original will." He laid it on the coffee table. "And this is the version Patricia filed with the court." Cousin Kyle leaned forward. Aunt Martha stood up. "The signatures on the second will," Robert said, "are forgeries. Patricia stole $180,000 from our dead parents, and then she spent the next 14 years telling everyone that Diana was the reason the money was gone. She needed a scapegoat for the lifestyle she was living." The silence that followed was deafening. It was the sound of 26 people realizing they had been accomplices to a crime. "Is it true, Patty?" My father's voice was different now. It wasn't the voice of a man sawing turkey. It was the voice of a man who had just realized he was married to a stranger. "Answer me. Is any of this true?" My mother didn't look at him. She looked at the room, her eyes darting, looking for a way out. She tried the martyr act. "Do you know how hard it was? Managing everything? I did what I had to do for this family." "You stole from a 13-year-old girl, Patricia," Robert said. "You let her work 2 jobs and bury herself in debt while you remodeled your kitchen with her inheritance." One by one, the hands that had been raised against me began to drop. Aunt Ruth walked out without a word. Aunt Martha followed. The room fractured. The courtroom was empty, and the Queen was sitting alone on her sofa, surrounded by papers that proved she was a thief. A stolen inheritance is heavy, but a stolen life is weightless. Robert found me on the porch. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from the sheer weight of the truth. Megan and Jenna were there too. We sat on the steps, our breath misting in the air. "She liquidated the fund within a year of their death," Robert told us. "She told everyone you were a financial drain to cover her own tracks. She made you the villain so she could be the victim." Megan was crying, her head in her hands. "I said no to you, Diana, when your car broke down. I said no because she told me you'd never pay me back." I looked at my sister. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt tired. "I know, Megan, I know." By midnight, the house was a tomb. My father had driven away in his truck. My mother was a silhouette in the kitchen window, sitting alone with the leftovers. Nobody stayed to eat. The next few months were a blur of legal offices and cold realizations. I didn't sue for revenge. I filed a claim because $20,000 belonged to me, and I was done paying for lies I didn't tell. I got my settlement in February. I paid off every cent of my student loans. The rest went into a savings account that no one else can touch. For the first time in my life, I don't owe anyone an explanation for my existence. My father goes to therapy now. He calls me every Saturday. He doesn't ask for forgiveness, and I don't give it yet. We're just talking. He's learning how to speak up after 30 years of silence. I saw my mother one last time in a coffee shop in the next town over. She looked small. The power she had held over me for 27 years had evaporated the moment that briefcase was opened. "Can we talk?" she asked. "No, Mom," I said. "We can negotiate, but we're done talking." I'm still a school counselor. I'm studying for my advanced certification now, using my grandmother's money for exactly what she wanted. I'm not the dead weight anymore. I'm the one holding the scale. Loneliness makes dangerous choices feel reasonable, but the truth makes them impossible. Thank you for staying with me until the final word. It means more than you know. If this story stirred something in you, if you've ever had to find the courage to stand up when your own family was trying to keep you down, please hit like and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but so the next person who feels trapped can find this. And if you're wondering what happened when the district attorney finally looked at those forged signatures, or the secret my father found in the attic after he moved out, that story is waiting for you.